Alright, welcome to video number 2 in Math 110. Now we're going to be talking about converting of decimals, percents, and fractions. We also might be touching on, doing solving some simple expressions a little bit later on. Disclaimer, if you do not like the word but, you do not need to be watching this video. Disclaimer ended. What? Now, moving on. First video we talked about ratios and stuff like that and how that is comparing two numbers, and we also talked about proportions and how it's comparing two ratios. Just to kind of give you an idea, decimals and percents and fractions, they're all a type of ratios. Write that word down. They're all a type of a ratio. Decimals are ratios that compare the digits of the decimal to whatever place value that it might be. The other percents are always compared to 100, and fractions can just about be compared to anything, all right? And you'll kind of see that here in a minute. However, it's because that they're all a type of ratio and they're all a type of comparisons, we can actually use proportions and do different mathematical magic, and we can convert from one thing to the other. I can take a decimal and change it to a fraction, and take that fraction and change it to a percent, take the percent and change it back into the decimal, and we can just keep going and going and going forever and ever. It makes a giant circle. Decimals, percents, and fractions, they all are basically the same thing. You just need to know how to manipulate it to make it happen. So we're going to start with the simple stuff. It's taking a decimal number and changing it to a percent, and then going backwards, changing a percent back to a decimal. This is pretty one of the easy way to do it. And I kind of do it this way through a chart. You don't have to do this. Quite frankly, I don't even use a chart anymore. I just know how to do this. But this might help keep you organized in your thoughts. And if you've got this down pat, don't even use the chart. It's not really necessary. It's just a way that might be able to help you. Okay? So if you look at it, I have a chart there. It says decimal on one side and percent on the other, and under decimal it says divide by 100, okay? And then under percent it says multiply by 100. So I'm going to make a really ugly looking chart. D percent. Now, why do I do decimal and percent this way? It's better to remember it this direction. Don't write it like this. There's a reason for it, because if you can remember it this way, D and P, you remember alphabetically, you might goof up if you try to use it this. So this is kind of, I know that sounds really silly, but in a minute you're going to understand why. So I have decimals and I have, I have decimals and I have percents. So the first number that we're going to give you in your chart is 0.95. Your job is to change it to percent. Well, since this is a decimal, in order to change it to a percent, we have to do this. What's left? It says 0.95, and since this is already a decimal, in order to change it to a percent, we're simply going to multiply that number by 100. When I do 0.95 and I multiply it by 100, I get 95%. Alright, the next one that I gave you happens to be 63.3%. And since it's on this side of my chart, in order to go back over here, instead of multiplying by 100, I'm going to divide by 100. And when I do, I get 0.633. That's really all it is. So if you're going from decimal to a percent, you're going to multiply. If you're going the opposite way, you're going to divide. All right? Now, that's the mathematical way of doing things. That's the proper way of saying it. We're going to multiply and divide. Now we're going to do it my way. It's called butt math. All right, butt math is easy. Butt math, you don't have to remember divide by or multiply by. All you need to remember is your chart. You need to know one thing. D is here, P is here. All right, so let's do some butt math. All right, butt math. I've given you the number 3.26. All right, I need to change that into a percentage. Well, in order for me to change it, I'm going to go in this direction like that. Well, let me ask you a question. How many butt cheeks do you have? Well, if you're like me, you have only 2. If you have more than 2 butt cheeks, sorry, but you have 2 butt cheeks. Not 1, not 4, but 2. So what you're going to do is you are going to find your decimal and you're going to move your butt cheeks. How many places? 2 times. What direction? Hey, the arrow tells me because I'm going from decimal to percent. So I'm going to move over 1, 2 times. What does that do? It changes this number to 326%. I just did some butt math on you. I like butt math more than trying to remember multiplication and division. All right, so let's do the other thing. This time I have 1.5%. Okay? Well, I needed it as a decimal, so I am going to go in that direction. I'm going to have how many butt cheeks? 2. And since I have 2 butt cheeks, I'm going to move it 1 time, 2 times. Now, here's the problem. You see this butt cheek? It has the number 1 on it. You see this butt cheek? It doesn't have a number. It's sad. So, tattoo the number 0 to it. When you have a butt cheek that doesn't have a number, tattoo 0 to it. And what you get is 0.015. Now, this is a correct answer, but let me show you an answer that's even better. 0.015. Now, most of this class is done online, and so the computer doesn't make the distinction. However, in the real world, if you don't put that 0 there, your boss could fire you. Here's the reason why. Let's say I have this. 0.15 grams. Let's change that, milligrams. You're supposed to give somebody that amount of medication. However, what happens over time is maybe that pencil mark where it says 0.5, it disappears. What did all of a sudden happen? Your 0.5 milligrams just became 15 milligrams. And guess what you just did? You overdosed your patient. So, what's a better way of doing it? If you put that 0 in front of it, and over time that decimal erases, people are still going to see the 0, and they're going to be questioning 0.15. That can't be 15. It must be 0.15. That must be 0.15 milligrams. That's probably what they meant. It just the decimal's gone. That's why it's so important to put a 0 at the beginning of your number when you're working with decimals, especially in the real world. Okay, again, like I said, on your homework, especially since it's online done by computer, your computer doesn't make that distinction. But in the real world, put that 0 there. All right. Now, here's a big thing. Look at the bottom. I'm going to tell you a little story. It says this. Remember what your mom and dad told you? My mom and dad did this a lot. If they told me to do something and I wasn't doing it, my dad would get angry and said, "Boy, move your butt." How about your parents? Did they say that? They might have said something a little bit nastier. My parents didn't. They would say, "Move your butt." And if I didn't move my butt, it means that I wasn't doing anything. Later on, you're going to hear me say, if you haven't moved your butt, you haven't done anything. What I'm telling you is that you forgot to change the decimal to a percent. Later on, it's imperative that you know how to do this. Because if you don't change a percent to a decimal, your answer to future problems are wrong. So when you go to do future problems, and I'll remind you when we get there, always change your percent to a decimal when you start doing the math. Otherwise, it's going to be completely off. All right? So remember what your mom and dad said. Move your butt. Now, that was done. All right, so converting fractions to decimals. This is actually even easier more than anything. Look at what it says. All you have to do is take the fraction's numerator, which is the top number, and divide by the denominator, which is the bottom number. So if I have, oops, wow, that thing got stuck. Couldn't get it out. All right, so if I have the fraction 3/5, well, all I have to do is say 3 divided by 5, put that in my calculator, or if you might already know the answer, well, happens to be the decimal is 0.6. Notice I put the 0 as I wrote it down. I didn't just write 0.6. Okay? Your calculator might just say 0.6. Real world, 0.6. All right, 6/8. All right, 6 divided by 8, what would you get? 6/8 is 0.75. That's really simple. So all you got to do from a fraction to decimal, divide. Okay? The next one here, we want to work backwards now. This one's a little bit more complicated, okay? It says to convert a decimal to a fraction. I want to read this and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. So in this chart, we have, excuse me, it says this. You need to take all the digits to the right of the decimal and make them your numerator. Then take the last place value and make it your denominator. Lastly, simplify the fraction if possible. All right, so I'm going to kind of make it a little rinky-dink chart like what you have on your paper. You have decimal, okay? You have unsimplified fraction. I'm going to put UF because I'm lazy. And then you have simplified fraction. This is the final answer that we're looking for. All right? So, the original decimal that I'm going to give you for the first one is 0.56. Now, the instructions tell you to take the digits to the right of the decimal and make it your numerator. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write 56. That's all it's saying is 56. And then it tells you to use the place value of the last digit and use that as your denominator. Well, this is the 100th. Well, how do you write 100? Well, 100. This is your unsimplified fraction, 56 over 100. Okay? That's really all this is. And now we should know by this time in our lives how to simplify a fraction. We can do multiple different ways, but I'm just going to skip to the end. When we do that, we ultimately get 14 over 25. All right? Now, next one. Take a moment and I want you to try this one by yourself. 0.697. Pause the video right now. I assume that you paused the video. If you didn't, well, shame on you. Alright, so same procedure. We're going to do 697 because those are the digits to the right of the decimal. We're going to put it over the last place value. Well, this is the 10/100,000. Alright, over 1,000. And you probably hear my baby screaming in the background. That's cool. Alright, well, this is the unsimplified version. If you got this and you got stuck, good for you, because guess what? You can't simplify this anymore. So this is also your simplified version. And that happens. It happens sometimes. Don't let that freak you out. Just try to make sure that you go through all the possible avenues that you can think of. Make sure it's not just divisible by 2, divisible by 3, divisible by 4, simplify, so forth, so on. You know how to simplify. Try to go through all of them that you can, and if you can't come up with anything, more than likely, this is what we would call prime, meaning you can't do anything else to it. Alright. Baby stopped crying, so I'm going to try one more. Go on to the next thing. Alright. This tells us, this next piece says, convert percents to fractions. Alright, so this is another easy one. It's use all the digits, what's that word? Sounds like Digimon. Y'all remember that from the 90s? Anybody? Anybody? Or am I just old? Digimon. Alright, use all the digits of the percent as the numerator and use 100 as the denominator. Alright, so I have the percent, this is my chart again, percent, the unsimplified fraction, and then the simplified fraction. Alright, in this case I'm giving you 15%. Well, all I'm going to do is take the digits here, which is 15, and I'm going to divide it by 100. That's my unsimplified fraction. And now I can just go ahead and simplify, and I would get 3 over 20. Alright, pretty easy. Let's try one more. Alright, 300%. Now, unsimplified fraction. That's just going to be 300 over 100. Simplify it. 3 over 1. In this case, 3 over 1 is also equal to 3. Either one of these are fine. I'll be honest with you, 3 is the better answer. Just is. But that's good too. Fact of the matter is, I will tell you, if I'm not mistaken, that your homework will primarily only accept it as the whole number. 3 over 1 will not be acceptable, so be aware of that. I don't think you have anything, though, that will actually ask you to go from percent to fraction. This is just something for your information. But just be aware that this is the more commonly accepted answer, because really, think about it. 3 over 1, it's just 3. Why waste your money and write 3 over 1? I mean, waste your time. Alright. Well, maybe we're not supposed to go to bad sleep. Next. Converting fractions to percents takes just a little bit longer. Not too terribly bad, but in order for you to go from a fraction to a percent, you first need to go from the fraction to a decimal by using the methods we've already described, and then from a decimal to a percent by using the methods we've already described, such as multiplying by 100 or using butt math. Butt math is always the best. I love butt math. It's so much fun. Alright, so here's your little handy dandy chart. We have fraction, and the fraction I'm going to give you is 1/4. Well, I need to go from 1/4 of that fraction to a decimal first. Well, how do I do that? I simply divide 1 divided by 4, and I get 0.25. Well, I don't want decimal, I want percent. So what do I do now? Butt math it, multiply by 100, however you want to do it, and you get 25%. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Alright, 3/8, same principle. Divide, you get 0.375. Go from there to your percent using multiplication or butt math, and you get 37.5%. Alright? Now, just below all this, you have a chart that I would like you to try. Be very cautious on some of these, because I do kind of trick you up a little bit. Purposely did it, just because I'm a jerk. Yeah, I know. And I want you to try them anyway. Okay, so pause the video now, and when you unpause it, you're going to see, I'll show you the answers. Okay, so pause the video now. Alright, hopefully you paused it, but here are your answers. Notice that the first one, your fraction could have been 27 over 20. Possible answer also could have been 1 over 7/20 if you decided to write it as a mixed fraction. Either one of those is fine. Again, you're not going to really see that type of problem too much in your homework, but anyway, pause this video, you may go through it and check your answers, and if you have any questions, you know how to find me. I love doing that for some reason. It's kind of therapeutic. Alright. Solving simple percent expressions. You're going to get, it's easier just to say this. In mathematics, there's some terminologies that we use, and certain words mean certain mathematical operations, such as is. Is means equals. So when I say equals, I mean as in the equal sign. Is means equal sign. All right. The other one is the word of. Of means multiplication. Now, what I'm going to do probably for these problems is I'm going to, instead of using this as my multiplication sign, I'm going to use this as my multiplication sign. This dot, this a big bold dot, if you didn't know, is also another way of signing multiplication. We use this more often in algebra because in algebra we use x as an actual unknown variable, and it gets confusing if you say x times x. That makes no sense. Okay, to a person in algebra, this says something completely different than saying x times x. This is actually saying x to the third power. And if you have any clue what I'm just talking about, good for you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, well, don't worry about it, because I told you that is means equals, of means times. This is in these types of problems that we're going through. And most of the stuff that we'll do throughout the semester. However, just be aware that depending on how the word, especially the word of, and where it's used at, it may not mean multiplication. Okay? But you shouldn't run into that problem. So you just kind of got to be very cautious in how you read these things. But other than that, it's not too bad. Alright, so let's just go ahead and check this out. Number one, it says, I'm going to write it up on the board. I want you to see exactly what I'm going to do. 3 is blank percent of 4. Oh no, baby's waking up. Alright, I got to do this problem before I have to go change his diaper. Yes, I am a father, I am home. Alright, so 3. What I'm going to actually do is rewrite this problem real fast to something that's more easy to understand. We're going to say 3 is means equals. We don't know what this is, so I'm going to use the letter X for percent. Of is multiplication. 4. Alright, I'm going to rewrite this as 3 is equal to 4x, because x times 4 is 4x. Well, this looks mighty familiar now. What do? We divide by 4 on both sides. When we do, we get 0.75 equals x. Well, I'm going to finish this thought, and then I got to go take care of the baby. Did you move your butt? Because look what the question's asking. It's asking for percent. Did you move your butt? No, you didn't. So this is not the correct answer, because I need a percent, not the decimal. So move your butt. Change it from this decimal to percent. When you do, you find out that 75% is your correct answer. 3 is 75% of 4. I'm going to pause the video. I'll come back after I check on my baby. Alright, so this is Daniel. He's going to help teach math. He's a year old, by the way. Alright, so the next problem that I've given you is 60% of what number is 12. So we're going to rewrite this expression as something. 60%. Well, here's the thing. I told you before, when you have percentages, change them to decimals. Move your butt. I made sure to do that. Now, you're telling everybody to tell me, move your butt. Yes, I'm random. Now, 60% can be written as a decimal as 0.6. The word of is multiplication. What number? I don't know. X is equals 12. Well, we can write this as 0.6x is equal to 12. At this point in time, you should know how to solve for x. We divide by 0.6 on both sides. And when we do, we get that x is equal to 20. Okay. So we're going to try the next two with you, and then we're going to call it quits in the video here in just a minute. Same procedure. What percent? We don't know it, so we're going to say, I'm going to say p this time just to be different, of this multiplication 32 is 10. What percent of 32 is 10? Well, we can rewrite this to say 32p is equal to 10. We know how to divide this by 32 on both sides. We get that p is equal to 0.3, making sure my numbers, 1, 2, 5. Now, what were we looking for again? We were looking for percent. Did you move your butt? No. No, I haven't moved my butt. Well, then I haven't done anything. So, move your butt. 1, 2. The final answer is 31.25%. So remember, move your butt. All right, last problem right now. Now, this one's a little bit more tricky because of, well, quite frankly, grammar. If you're like me, grammar can confuse you, as I'm not a grammar specialist, as you have probably already figured out in just these two videos alone. But let's read this problem. It says, find a number such that 15% of it, what's it? All right, is 720. Now, it says of it. Well, it is this stuff up here. It says find a number, that it represents the number. So really what we could say is this: 15% of a number, because this it is talking about that number, is 720. So this is kind of like some basic grammar. I will tell you this, I have no idea what the proper terminology for this type of grammar is. It's just that I understand that it is representing number. So really, I'm just going to say 15%, remember, move your butt, of it, we'll say I, is 720. Well, we can rewrite this as 0.15i equals 720. Divide by 0.15. And we get that I is equal to 4,800. And that's really it with those simple expressions like that. When you get those in your homework, just remember to break it down like I showed you. Percents need to be changed to decimals, and you need to remember the word of is multiplication. You need to remember the word is, it means equals. Man, this boy's getting heavy. Y'all should try doing this, by the way. Boy, and he won't let me put him down. But that's pretty much it, okay? There's nothing too terribly hard about this. What I want you to really do is to practice it in your homework. Now, will you let me put you down? Oh, thank you. Whew. All right. Now, the last thing, it says word problems. I'm not going to do any for you. Reason being, I don't want to make everything easy for you. I have done a lot of these problems on your homeworks for you. Okay, bud, here you go. To kind of give you some help, but the word problems, I want you to really try it on your own. Use the skills that we've covered in the previous video and in this video to kind of help you out. If you are struggling with those word problems, that's okay. However, don't just come to me and say, Mr. Lewis, I don't know what to do. Well, have you tried it? No. I just didn't know where to start. Try anything. So what I want you to do is, if you come to a problem and you don't know how to solve it, especially these word problems for this particular homework, try it and show me your work. For my students who are on campus, just show it to me in the next class. Show me your work and I'll work one-on-one with you. For my students who are online, I'm not going to let you slide by it either. Scan your work to me and email it to me, and I'll come and help you. And I won't come to you, but I'll help you, all right? And kind of help work. But the point is, you need to do something first, okay? So if you want some help from me on these problems, show me what you're doing through your email or showing to me in class or however, and I'll help you as needed. So don't worry about that. But that concludes this video. I think we got 2 more videos in this module and you're about done. So I will see you in video 3.